Hi, I'm back with Sourdough. The previous chapter was pretty, like, the name was really weird. It was called Jesus Christ is an English Muffin. So now we're starting with sharing the miracle. What happened in the previous chapter was that our protagonist bought a book to learn how to bake bread because she just bought this sourdough starter from Clement Street, a restaurant she was really fond of. She ate from that because she's like the tech bro kind of a person. Like she's a girl, not tech bro, tech sis, whatever. Like she's this tech person who just like ate for sustenance, and she found this curry and bread from this place called Clement Street, but now it has closed. And the people, because she was their number one eater, so they gave her the Clement Street starter. And now, since she had the starter, she was like, okay, what do I do with that? So she bought this book and she made her first bread, sourdough bread, like from that starter. And that's why the name of this book is also Sourdough. Uh, I like this book pretty much because it's like um tiny read and it's a reasonable read for many people, but it's like okayish read, and you don't have to think that much. It's like a good, fun read. So I liked it very much at that time. Now I'm gonna share it. I'm sharing the miracle. So the chapter name is Sharing the Miracle. Let's start. Uh, the next morning, it felt like it had been a dream. But there was the mess I'd left on the counter drawer. And there was the aroma still lingering. I doubt, but okay. Evidence of the work I had done. The thing I'd produced. I emailed Peter and General Dexterity to invoke one of my theoretical vacation days. I could almost hear his gasp across the city, then switched my phone to airplane mode and baked two more loaves. Best decision ever. It's this time the dough was not so gloppy. The process not such a disaster. I waited serenely, watching 3 episodes of the dark serial drama, while the dough fermented and rose, and another episode while the twin loaves baked. But when I opened the oven door, and pulled out the wrap, I had to suck in a sharp breath. My first thought was, you have had a tiny stroke, possibly stress related. I had read about neurological conditions that made it so you couldn't recognize people's faces. Was I suffering the opposite? Some sort of hyper recognition? I looked around the kitchen, fixed my gaze on random objects cupboard, faucet, refrigerator. Did I see faces? I did not see faces. The power outlet looked like a little dude, but power outlets always look like little dudes. I looked down again at the loaves on the baking stone, which I just, as before, carried in their crusts, the overwhelming illusion of dark eyes, upturned noses, fissured mouths. Upon closer inspection, these faces were different from the last loaves. They weren't disturbing. Their eyes squinted merrily, and their mouths curled into ragged lantern grins, something like this. The bread knife was the solution to all of my problems. I sawed and sawed until the faces were known. It's always new and astonishing when it's yours. Infatuation, sex, card tricks. How many humans have baked how many loaves of bread? Across many centuries. Across how many centuries? I am sure Burek baked calmly, matter of factly, without paroxysms of cosmic delight. But that didn't matter. For me, the novice, the miracle was intact, and I felt compelled by force new to me, thrillingly implacable, to share. That's what humans do, you have some kind of like really great happiness and you share it with people. So that's what our protagonist is also doing. I tried to slice loaves into neat bundles with twine and bound it outside, still wearing the sweatpants I'd slept in. My apartment was the lower of the two units carved out of a dingy house on Cabrillo Street. My neighbor, Cornelia, lived upstairs. Our front doors were side by side on the face of the house, and I knocked on Cornelia's now. I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. We didn't see each other that often, so when she appeared, her expression was cautiously curious. I presented the twine wrapped loaf and explained, I baked this for you. Had I really? Was it possible? Did the universe permit feats of such profound creative alchemy? Apparently it did. Cornelia was, if not quite as impressed with me as I was, still at least medium impressed. What a nice surprise, she said, accepting the gift, and lifted it to her nose, murmuring, mmm, appreciatively. Which is exactly the right thing to do when someone presents you with the second loaf of sourdough they've ever baked in all of their history. I didn't know you were a baker, Cornelia said. I told her I had not been until yesterday. She raised an eyebrow, seemed to reappraise the loaf in her hands. Her impressedness molded upwards a degree. There was still another loaf to share. I went to the house next door, its resident unknown, never before seen or even considered. No one was home. Or they were, but they were spooked by the appearance of a wild eyed woman in sweatpants, alive to the miracles of the universe, cradling a mysterious bundle with traces of dough drying on the front of her t shirt, tech company t shirt. The next building, then. There were three doors, and I rang the bell attached to the first. A man came to the door, flabby and whiskered, a bit drowsy looking. Behind him, deeper in his apartment, I saw a television paused on a frame of a movie. From the color palette and aspect ratio, I guess early 2000s superhero. Hello, I said. I live down the street. I was baking. I made too much. I held out the loaf. He looked skeptical. Nah, thanks, that's okay. Of course you would. Come on. Never take food from strangers. We have been ingrained with this. But eat it. It's good. Okay. I wanted him so badly to take it. I used the starter from Clement Street Soup and Sourdough. Did you ever order from them? Two brothers, double spicy? The movie watcher shook his head slowly, and the muscles under his eyes were very. Sorry, I've got to go. He closed the door, and I heard one, two, three latches click into place. If I wanted to share this miracle, and I did, it would have to be with the people who knew me. Of course, they're not going to take it otherwise, if they value their life. At the slurry table, when I unveiled my gift, Peter scooched his chair back ap- apprehensively. I don't eat bread, he reminded us. He said it like a ward against evil. The other slurpers had no such compunctions. The slices I had sawed were thick and fluffy, and we slathered them with plum jam, swiped from Chef Kate's fancy toast station. Garrett relished the sourdough most of all. The sounds he made were borderline NSFW. You made this, he said, mouth agape, like from a kit. Does it come frozen? Garrett lived in one of those microcube apartments buildings on Sanson Street, and his living space didn't have any kind of kitchen. Instead, it offered a wall mounted touch screen connected to various delivery services, ex- expedited to sub 5 minute timescales through a contract with the building's owner. Garrett operated at a level of abstraction from food that made me look like Ina Garten. I explained the process by which living sourdough starter gave the bread its texture and flavor. Garrett's eyes were wide with disbelief. It was alive, he said softly. Worryingly, wonderingly, he, like me, had never been considered where bread came from or why it looked the way it did. This was us, our time and place. We could wrestle sophisticated robots into submission, but we were confounded by the most basic processes of life. Chef Kate was making the rounds, chatting amiably with her lunchers. Generally, when she did this, she avoided our table, reticent to confront the disgustingness of our food preferences. Today, Arjun called out to her, Chef Kate, and she changed her course to approach us, her gaze darkening. Louis bakes bread now. Arjun announced. I didn't think you kids ate solid food, Kate said. That's only Peter. Correct, Peter said. Well, Kate said, can I try some? All gazes swiveled to Garrett, who had just consumed the last slice. He looked guilty, but in no way repentant. Chef Kate hooted. I never thought I would see the day. One of the slutty kids baking bread. The rest eating it. Dude, her, dude, was a thumping approval. Louis, bring me some. I want to taste your waves. Waves. Why did I say waves? Wares. That night, when I returned home, a new disaster. The Clement Street starter had dried out. It was now less slime and more a crust on the walls of the crock. Its surface was dark and rippled. It smelled like nail polish remover. It looked dead. In a panic, I threw together a batch of the flour water starter food. It felt like I ought to drip it in slowly, just a bit at a time, as I were bottle feeding an ailing kitten. I had never bottle fed an ailing kitten. I did once coax Kubrick back to life with a spray bottle. You have to work pretty hard to push a cactus to the brink of death. I dripped the floury paste into the crock, and as I did, I spoke to the start. Come on, I murmured. It was just one day. You're supposed to be able to handle that. The bread book said I could leave you alone for a week. You must play the music of the mask, the shaman had said. I set his CD to playing on my laptop and tapped a key to increase its volume. Plink, plink, plink. As I fed and coddled the starter, it began to perk up. Its color lightened. One tentative bubble formed on the surface. Relief, but also exasperation. Beric and Shaman had gifted me with a starter that was strange and potent, and also extremely high maintenance. I left the starter to recuperate and fished from the cupboard a bottle of Pinot Noir, purchased from the hedgehog on its label, then retreated into my living room to sit with my eyes closed, sipping the wine tasted vaguely like dirt. Not in a bad way. When Shaman's CD ended, I poured the last of the wine into my glass, then played it again. The CD's 7 songs were slow and meandering, and seemed to fade into one into the other. Some were snug, some were sung. Why did I say snug? Some were sung by groups of women, others by groups of men, and one was a mixed chorus. The style was all the same, sad, so very sad, but matter of factly so. These songs did not blubber. They calmly asserted that life was tragic, but at least there was wine in it. I realized suddenly that my apartment reeked of bananas. I followed the scent to the kitchen, where the Clement Street starter had more than doubled in its volume and was surging out of the crock. Poofy tendrils oozing down the green ceramic. I heard a crispy, crackling pop, pop, pop. The starter was not merely bubbling, but frothing. But, but frothing. But frothing. It is only barely, oh my god, this word. It is barely anthropomorphization. Anthropomorphization, rather. To say it looked happy. Anthropomorphization, what the hell is that? I could understand that. I couldn't. I retired to my bedroom, where I kicked off my pants and flopped down onto my futon. I was drunk and tired and happy, more than happy, delighted, proud of myself, not just for making the bread, but for sharing it, and for making a few friends, even if they were all programmers and Louises. Maybe programmers and Louises are all you need. Maybe. I was midway to sleep when I heard a sound in my apartment, a whispering creak, like the bending of a board. It sounded again, louder. A dose of danger chemicals flooded into my blood, and I snapped wide awake, eyes sharp, no sparing. I think some people call out, hello, when they hear strange noises in the night. This has always seemed foolish to me. If the strange sound does indeed emanate from something fearful, then it already has the drop on you. Better to stay quiet, better to even the odds. I hopped up onto the balls of my feet, crept to the door frame, slowed my breathing, and stretched my senses to listen. The sound continued. It was less a creaking and more a high back of the throat sound. Mm, mm, mm. My pulse was throbbing in my neck. I peeked out into the main room. My eyes flicked from the front door to the back window. Everything was shut tight. This was one virtue of a small domain. You can survey it all at once. The sound was resolving into something residential, but I still didn't know what. The wind whistling through a crack somewhere? I relaxed and padded out to investigate. I followed my ears into the kitchen, where the sound was louder, up to the countertop, louder still. I zeroed it on the source, the Clement Street starter in its crock. As I watched, the surface of the starter trembled. I had become it had become smooth and glossy in the moonlight. It went mmm. Even up close, the sound was faint. I leaned my face in, trying to discern its source. Was the crock itself flexing as it cooled in the night? Was the sound coming from a pipe behind the wall? I lifted my hand to move the crock so I could find out moved with it, if the sound moved with it. And just as my fingers touched the ceramic, the rose and became a coherent note, then two, then more soft, but clear. The starter was singing. Its surface was vibrating like a pot, just before boiling. This cold, simmering substance was somehow sustaining a quavering harmony. It was singing in the key of of Shaman's CD, the key of the chords of the mass. It crooned into the darkness, then faded. There was silence, in which I processed the fact that this crop of bass line had been singing, in which it followed its performance with a tidy farting noise, in which it settled into quiescence, 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 in which I moved first my fingers and then myself away from the crop, across the room, to stand against the far wall. I wish I could say that moment was hazy or dreamlike, but I was sharp with the battle readiness familiar to all humans of all ears, awoken by strange noises in the night. I approached the crock again, peered inside, and whispered. The starter's surface had lost its shiny tautness. It sang no more. I considered the possibilities. An accident of gas spurt? I reasoned produce a sound, boiling pots bubbled merrily, but it would be plausible. It would go plop, poof, or plop, possibly doof or bloop. Maybe, maybe. A, fra- a farting sound could be explained. I let my tongue and vocal cords go slack, forced air out of my lungs, and simulated these airy sounds. Boof, plop. But the starter had not gone boof or plop. It had murmured, in a clear, coherent voice. You needed lips to make when a and you needed a brain to find a note. That was complicated equipment. I looked down at the Clement Street starter. It was not complicated. I set the croc's lid in place and padded back to bed. Sleep came slowly. It's a mess when strange events smack into the windscreen of a resolutely rational mind. It would have been tidy to believe that it was a ghost speaking to me through the malleable medium of dough. There's a good story there. I could have organized a séance, hired a specialized kitchen exorcist, etc. But of course, I do not believe in kitchen ghosts or sourdough angels or 500-degree devils, and so the event I had witnessed had to be explained by actually existing physical and mental phenomena. I simply could not come up with any. The next day was Saturday, and I spent most of it trying to devise a way in which the starter's song might have been a bit of dream shifted into walking. the mental equivalent of an off by one error, but the sound was sharp in my memory. I ejected Shaman's CD and turned it over in my hands. Its title was handwritten. There was no label, no publisher, no barcode, there were no clues. I opened my laptop and searched in vain for information on world writing systems. I found a comparative table of scripts, but at the top of the page it warned that there were thousands of written languages on Earth, some of them with just a handful of writers, and it would be impossible to list them all. Nothing in the table matched the script on the CD, the script on Burek's menu. I'd received no reply to my email. The starter did not sing that day. It did not evince any special loftiness. It did not respond to questioning. It didn't try to bake. Instead, I watched it closely, stirred it with a spoon, stuck my nose into the crock. It was mute, though pregnant. Bananas. That sounds like menus. Bananas, bananas. Okay. Next chapter we'll read soon. It's very small. Oh, but yeah, next chapter we'll read soon. So bye. Thanks for tuning in.